Hello, good afternoon. My name is Frank. Have you come for the Heritage Walk? We'll give it a couple of minutes and then we can start. So far, so good. So thank you all for coming. It's lovely to see you. I'm glad that you're interested in the Polish heritage of this town. My name is Frank and I'll be guiding you through this afternoon. This month we are commemorating an important and a very sad anniversary of the official start of the Second World War 75 years ago. So let's just have a little reminder of what happened. On 1st of September 1939, the Second World War started. It was one of the most brutal global conflicts in human history. The Soviet army invaded eastern Poland and completely shattered any hopes for Poland to defend itself. But how, 6 years later, over 200,000 Poles made it to Britain and about 2,000 of them came to the Huddersfield area. The Poles who later settled in the UK came from a wide range of backgrounds. These included, for example, young people taken to Germany as slave labour, people forcibly drafted into the German army, individuals taken to Soviet prisons and families exported to Siberia as slave labour, who later, mostly able men, joined the Second Polish Corps, the General Anders army, or women and children who became refugees scattered around the world. There were also many others who managed to escape before being imprisoned or taken away and joined the Polish forces in the West. So this is a little bit of the war history and the background to the different reasons for why the Polish people came here in the aftermath of the Second World War. So what happened in the Huddersfield area? The housing situation after the war was desperate. The Poles were initially based in the former military camps, but after 2 years of stay in the Polish Resettlement Corps, they were demobbed and settled into the civilian life. These camps were scattered across Britain. A lot of them were also in Yorkshire. The closest one in the vicinity was the Cannon Hall Resettlement Camp, where there were also some Canadian and British forces during the Second World War, and later on the Polish forces and Polish families. The result of this was the Polish Resettlement Act in 1947, Britain's first mass immigration law, which allowed the former Polish military personnel to be demobbed in Britain and accepted as workers in Britain's vital industries, including agriculture, mining, textiles, building and others. They were joined by their wives and children who kept arriving from refugee camps across the world. There were also former slave workers in the Third Reich, as well as individuals escaping the advancing Red Army who became the so-called displaced persons. They became part of the European Volunteer Workers Scheme, also designed to help Britain revitalise its economy after the war. One Polish worker described his beginnings as such: "We lived in a cellar for quite a long time, where the water was on the walls and damp was a terrible thing and mice were running all over, and it was horrible." Despite the difficult conditions at the beginning, dozens of Polish communities were established across the UK, with the Huddersfield one beginning to form in 1947-48. The community has been here for 65 years, and I think we can call that history. The Poles founded many different organisations, including the Saturday School, where the British-born generation received instruction in the language, history and culture of their parents. The school is commemorating 65 years of existence this October. So this walk is actually marking several anniversaries. Apart from the 75 years since the Second World War, we also have 65 years of the Polish Saturday School in Huddersfield, and our next stop will be the Polish church at Fitzwilliam Street, which was formerly the Unitarian Chapel. And this building is commemorating, I just need to check it, 160 years since its official opening in December 1854. So I'll just tell you a little bit about that when we stop in the grounds of the Polish church. There is a little bit of background noise, so I hope you'll be able to hear me well. If you look at this church, you probably wouldn't be able to tell that it's Polish apart from the Polish flag that's flying up there. But otherwise, it looks completely Victorian. This year, the building is marking 160 years since it was opened for public worship as a Unitarian chapel in December 1854. The Unitarians used the building for over 100 years until the religious community shrank so rapidly that they could no longer maintain it, and thus they passed it on to the Poles, who have used it for over 60 years now. Despite this, it functioned for over 100 years until the decision was taken in the 50s to sell the building to the local Polish community, which had long been looking for a place of their own. The money needed to acquire the site was collected in record time, and many Poles offered their free time, labour and money to renovate it. It was consecrated in September 1962 and has been known as the Church of Our Lady of Częstochowa, Queen of Poland, since then. I will just continue with the tour of the church inside.
Jeden mówi tyś moja, i drugi mówi jak Bóg da, a trzeci mówi moja najmilejsza, czemu żeś mi tak smutna, a trzeci mówi
Between 1948 and 62, the Poles used St. Patrick's Church and the parochial hall where they had their own masses, but they were absolutely determined to have a place of worship of their own since the beginning. There is a wide range of reasons explaining why the Poles wanted to do things differently. One of them was obviously the Polish language. Nevertheless, masses were said in Latin until the first half of the 1960s, apart from the sermons, which were delivered in vernacular languages. It was clearly not just the issue of language, because the Poles actually had their own separate masses at St. Patrick's Church and the parish hall attached to it. Secondly, the explanation lies in the specific characteristics of Polish Roman Catholicism, strongly rooted in the national culture and folk traditions and the history of persecution and suffering. Catholicism in modern Polish history often served as a tool to express opposition to oppressive political rule in the country, whether during the times of Poland's partitions during the 19th century, when the country was being carved up by neighboring Russia, Prussia and Austria, or more recently during the Second World War and the Communist era. Among these characteristics is the veneration of the painting of Our Lady of Częstochowa, after which the church is called, also called Black Madonna, which is credited with miraculously saving the monastery of Jasna Góra, in English Bright Mount, from a Swedish invasion in 1655. Since then, the picture has become the symbol of Polishness, or rather Roman Catholic Polishness, and there is probably no Polish church without a reproduction of Black Madonna's painting. Naturally, Poles in the diaspora also named a large number of their churches as Our Lady of Częstochowa, among them Leeds, Bradford and Nottingham, just to name just a few. Huddersfield's Polish community in particular had a long tradition of venerating Black Madonna. Her picture, painted by a former member of the Polish community, hung above the altar at the camp chapel in Cawthorne. The two main church stained glass windows were made by Birmingham's Hardman Studios, and they were installed in 1978. The window at the front, above the altar, is a depiction of Christ the King and was financed by the second Polish priest, Jan Starostka. It had replaced an earlier window made of perspex glass, the first of its kind to be erected in the country. That's just a little bit, just an insight into some parts of, into some stories of how this church was established and the history of the community over the years. And now I'd like us to move down to the Polish Saturday School. So we are now in the Polish Church Hall, built underneath the church in the late 60s, where I wanted to talk about the Polish Saturday School actually. Education of children has always played an important part in the life of the Polish diaspora. Schools and universities were either completely closed down during the Second World War or were replaced with new ideologically fitting systems in Soviet-occupied territory. This, however, did not prevent the Poles from educating new generations of patriots as teaching continued underground. Those who managed to escape and join the Polish army abroad attended various training courses. Those children taken to the Soviet Union with their families in 1939 ended up as refugees after the proclamation of amnesty by Stalin and found themselves scattered around the world. From the humble beginning in 1949, when it had only 6 pupils, the school had greatly expanded to having 180 pupils and 100 staff in 1961. While the role of the family was irreplaceable in maintaining Polish language and traditions, and this is where children from mixed marriages were sometimes losing out, the Saturday School was essential in bringing up new generations of people with a good awareness of the history of Poland, its language and culture, who could advocate the country's cause in the diaspora. The benefit of the school was that it provided a meeting place for children of similar background and allowed people to form friendships that sometimes lasted a lifetime. There were also couples who met through the school and later got married. So if you fancy a GCSE from Polish or having a little chat, you are invited and you can put your name down on the list. So we'll just continue walking up the stairs and we can stop by this Irish Centre, what's now the Irish Centre. I'll probably skip a little bit of history, but I have to mention that the Huddersfield Polish Ex-Combatants Association number 440 was one of the many ex-servicemen's organisations formed in Great Britain after the war. The Huddersfield branch worked closely with the community and lent its support to the Saturday School, orchestra, choir, drama group, library, football and volleyball teams. It organised many concerts to mark important Polish national days, lectures, musical events, and organised fundraising at dances and other social gatherings. The combatants' flag, made and blessed in 1955, which carried the words "For God, Honour and Homeland," had a space left for a date when Poland would be free. This aim was finally accomplished in 1989, and so the movement lost its political resonance but carried on with supporting various charitable causes. Nevertheless, since the 1990s the membership was rapidly declining, and in the light of the democratic governments in Poland, it was no longer relevant to younger generations. The house at 86 Fitzwilliam Street was therefore sold in 1999 as the organisation became unable to continue the upkeep of this place. Interestingly, it went into hands of another local ethnic group, the Irish, who have used it as a pub since then and as a meeting place. Whoever doesn't want to continue can go to the Irish pub, which is on my right hand side, and the rest of the tour will be just very brief. We'll stop on the bridge, on Besançon Bridge there, to talk about the first ex-combatant's house, and just quickly outside St. Patrick's, where I just want to briefly mention the history when the Poles still didn't have their own church and were part of the St. Patrick's parish. Locally, the White Cross ran a canteen at the Cannon Hall camp, Cawthorne, and they bought a house in Huddersfield at 108 Fitzwilliam Street in order to convert it into a club for the 2,000 Polish workers in the town and district. This was in 1948. Among the key aims of the organisation was providing facilities for the community, promoting positive patriotism and struggles against ideologies, as well as helping to realise Polish patriotic, cultural and sports efforts, among others. The site was officially opened in 1961 by Mayor H.F. Brook during celebrations of the Polish Independence Day. He added, "Their limited knowledge of English language makes it essential that they have a social centre, otherwise they have nothing to do but linger in the street or frequent pubs and clubs." These complaints must have been very effective, as the club was opened only 3 months later, in October 1948. The role of the White Cross Society therefore was very important during the initial settlement of Poles in Huddersfield and the formation of the community. In 1949, for example, the club organised the first Christmas Eve supper for its members and sent gifts for all Polish people in Huddersfield and district. Amongst these wide-ranging activities was also the running of a class for English girls intending to marry Poles. So as I said, first site 108 Fitzwilliam Street. First it was White Cross Club, then ex-combatants, then Ring Road came, and so they moved to 86 Fitzwilliam Street. And they had a big trouble because it was a residential home and they had to renovate it and start from scratch again. So lots of problems. But as I suggested when we were in the church, the 60s were the most important era, when everything was built. They got their new church, the parish house next to it, the ex-combatants club. So by the early 1970s, the community was well settled and happy getting on with their life in Huddersfield. So can we just go towards St. Patrick's Church, where we'll end this tour. The Irish-Polish link proved to be very vital for the well-being of the Polish community. The first Polish priest and the founding father, Joseph, was granted an independent status so that he could serve the spiritual needs of the Polish nationals. This unique position was commented on by the examiner as parish within a parish. The Irish and Polish regularly came together in gigantic Corpus Christi processions, which must have attracted some attention when dressed in their colourful national costumes. The hall was used for various reasons, celebrations like the 3rd May and others. All these venues were really vital for the community who could congregate there before they got their own premises. Ethnic identity is nothing set in stone. It evolves all the time, and there was only one particular version of ethnic identity set by the Polish ex-servicemen to which everybody had to conform to. But now, when they no longer have this grip over the definition of Polishness, there are many different Polishnesses. What the ex-servicemen wanted to preserve when they came to Britain after the Second World War was their memories of childhood and of Poland that they remembered at the time, but not considering the fact that time had moved, and since they left Poland, it had already had a different culture. And it was maybe because it became communist, it went completely different directions. So they actually wanted to preserve a myth, because culture keeps evolving, and you can't say that there is one Polish or one ethnic identity. Today's tour went fantastically well. I think we had a really good turnout. I'm glad that people's interest is there, and they kept asking questions, and it seemed that most of the people who came today had some dealings in the past with the local Polish community, or had some Polish friends, went with them to school, or were of Polish origin themselves.
The anglicised version of my name is Janina Holubecki, but really because I've just done a Polish heritage talk, I should say that it should be Janina Horbecka. I really enjoyed the walk today because I came to find out a little bit about Polish heritage, because I'm half Polish, and I know shockingly little about the Polish side of me really, so it was very interesting. And also the idea that you can drive past all these buildings and never know they're there. I mean, I had no idea there was a Polish church or a Polish centre or anything in Huddersfield.
Well, I enjoyed today's walk because I wanted to bring back memories of my earlier days when I was involved with the community when it first came in the early 1950s onwards.
I enjoyed today's walk. I thought it was very interesting. I learnt quite a bit that I hadn't known before about the Polish heritage in Huddersfield in particular. It was about the right length. Well, I could have done with more really. And it was not at all energetic in terms of how far we had to walk, although I would imagine that for some people that could have been a problem. Fortunately, it's not for me.
There are plans for new talks and walks in the future. I would like to design a European Communities Heritage Walk, which would include not only the Polish community, but also talk about the community, also talk about the other Eastern European communities like the Ukrainians, Latvians, and give a little insight into how they set up their communities and the sites that were important to their cultural life.
We are actually coming to Huddersfield tomorrow again because we really like going to this sort of event. I'm quite involved with a heritage project in Hebden Bridge anyway, so it's the sort of thing I do, and I'm actually a heritage interpreter myself, so it's always really good to see what's going on, and particularly what sort of these Heritage Open Days are a great opportunity, to find out about things that you could never normally see. It's just these few days of the year that you can actually go into some of these buildings.
Oh yes, I would be interested in attending tours like this anytime, and of course I'll be looking out for more in next year's programme of the Heritage Weekend.